The neon glow of the research station's corridors danced across Dr. Mira Calder's tired features as she navigated the labyrinthine passageways of Orbital Research Platform, Epsilon 9. Her mind buzzed with simulations and genetic readouts. Project Cerberus was supposed to be the pinnacle of defensive bioengineering, an apex protector against any planetary threat. Instead, 3 massive heads growled at her on the holoscreen behind her desk, each one more restless than the last. She paused at the entrance to the xenobiology wing, pressing a palm to the thermal-sealed door. A hiss closely followed. By that unmistakable reverberation of heavy scales on alloy floors, Myra inhaled deeply. Just one weekend without surprises, she told herself. A vacation isn't a soft ping interrupted her thoughts. Her tablet's notification blinked insistently. Mandatory leave approved. Commander Hayes, heir apparent to the Orbital Fleet's tactical command, had personally thumbed her exemption. She'd worked 12 straight months, rarely sleeping. More than 4 hours at a stretch, and the board's orders were absolute. Leave, or face reassignment to Mars terraforming. A soft chime at her station announced another message. Your substitute has arrived. Mira looked up to find Yalan crooked his head through the doorway, face pale under the stark strip lighting. Dr. Calder, he said, voice low. Lieutenant Hayes is here to relieve you. Substitute? Her eyes narrowed. I requested a civilian consultant at most. She glanced at her lab coat sleeve, as if it might reveal some arcane insignia she hadn't noticed before. Yalan swallowed. He's military, but untrained in xenobiology. Commander Hayes insisted on hands-on oversight while you're off station. You know how politics gets. Myra's stomach clenched. She hadn't been back to Earth in months, and now, of all times, they were thrusting an outsider into the heart of the project. Fine, she snapped, though her voice lacked conviction. Just keep everything stable. The containment protocols are by the book. Yalan nodded nervously and slipped away. Mira sighed and keyed her tablet. Activate automated diagnostics and protocol lock. The readout confirmed that energy shields, environmental controls, and feeding schedules were all in spec. Good, she murmured. At least the systems are reliable. Moments later, the reinforced door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Lieutenant Arlo Hayes filled the threshold, an improbably broad-shouldered, affable presence in crisply pressed coveralls, bearing the Galactic Fleet insignia. He wore a sheepish grin that lit his angular face, as though he'd just arrived at a surprise party he wasn't sure he'd been invited to. Dr. Calder? He called, voice rich and warm. Lieutenant Hayes, she replied, forcing a polite nod. I'm the lead on Project Cerberus. You're here for weekend oversight, he finished, stepping inside and letting his gaze drift over the habitat behind the viewing port. I've read the reports. 3-headed defense unit, intelligent beyond expectation, mood swings, stellar reflexes. He turned back to her. Sounds like a handful. It took every ounce of Myra's professionalism not to roll her eyes. I wouldn't exactly call it a petting zoo, she said. Cerberus is a living weapon. Treat her with respect and caution. Do you have any experience with large-scale xenobiological containment? Hayes shrugged, brushing a stray lock of dark hair from his forehead. I survived basic training. I've landed shuttles in storm conditions. How different can this be? Myra forced a smile. Very different. Follow me. She led him down a short corridor into the heart of the habitat. Modular vast chamber ringed with reinforced alloy and observation ports. 3 heads, each the size of a small car, rose from a nest of bioluminescent algae pools and feeding troughs. Scales shimmered with violet and emerald hues. Claws engraved the metal floor with shallow gouges. One head, larger and bulkier than the other 2, surveyed Hayes with cold, calculating eyes. The smallest, its muzzle tipped in cobalt huft. In curiosity, Hayes swallowed hard but met the gaze of the cobalt-striped head. "Hey there," he said, voice calm. "I'm your new caretaker." For a heartbeat, nothing stirred. Then all three heads swung in unison, nostrils flaring as they exhaled in low, resonant growls. The metal gratings beneath their weight rattled. Mira placed a hand on the glass. "That's a greeting ritual. Don't move too fast." She studied Hayes's face. Imprinting is possible, but risky. Cerberus bonds strongly to the first caretaker it deems non-threatening. Hayes's brow furrowed. You're saying it could think I'm its parent?" "In a manner of speaking," Myra said. "If that happens, you'll have a level of control most handlers never achieve, but you'll also have its loyalty. And its expectations." Hayes swallowed, then squared his shoulders. "I accept the risk." Myra's communicator buzzed. "Appointment reminder. You're scheduled for debrief in the council chamber in 20 minutes. It chirped. She exhaled. "Right. My leave starts now. I'll be off station until Sunday." Hayes gave her a curt nod. "Enjoy your time off, Doctor. I'll handle things." As she stepped away, Myra cast one last glance at the trio of heads. The cobalt-striped one blinked once, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging his new guardian. An uneasy certainty washed over her. This weekend would redefine Project Cerberus entirely. And whichever way the scales tipped, there was no turning back. Lieutenant Arlo Hayes stepped into the habitat chamber with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The three massive heads of Cerberus loomed in the semicircular enclosure, their scales glittering under the harsh biocore lamps. The air hummed with latent energy, a low-frequency thrum that resonated in Hayes's chest. He swallowed hard and squared his shoulders, determined to live up to his impulsive promise. "Okay," he muttered to himself, glancing over at the control console. "First things first, establish trust." He approached with slow, steady steps, arms relaxed at his sides. The largest head, the Alpha, with obsidian-black scales and muscled jaws, tilted its snout, nostrils flaring. The medium head, streaked in jade and gold, emitted a series of low clicks that vibrated through the habitat's floor plates. But it was the smallest cobalt-tipped head that captivated Hayes's attention. Its eyes, pale as moonstone, regarded him with quiet curiosity. "Taste. Test," Hayes murmured, pulling from his pocket a sealable pouch of synth meat cubes. "Let's see if we can make a friend." He opened the pouch, and the scent of protein-rich biogel drifted through the air. The three heads leaned forward, tongues flicking in unison. Hayes lifted a single cube, extending it with a flat palm. For a moment, he thought the Alpha might snatch it, but instead that cobalt head lowered slowly, brushing its muzzle against his hand before delicately taking the offering. A thrill shot up Hayes's spine. Encouraged, he offered another cube. This time, the medium head darted in, its forked tongue tasting the air around his fingers. Hayes maintained a steady gaze, unflinching. As the second head sampled the meat, the third black as midnight snorted. Softly, its pupils narrowing in appraisal. "Good job," Hayes whispered, his heart pounding. "That's some good synth beef." With each cube he offered, the heads grew bolder. The Alpha pressed a heavy forelimb against his thigh in a gentle, almost protective gesture. The jade head nudged his elbow as though seeking reassurance. When Hayes straightened, his palm and arm were coated in shimmering reptilian saliva that smelled faintly of ozone and smoldering embers. JLE, and peered in through the observation window, tapping on the glass. "Sir," he began, but Hayes raised a finger to hush him. Jowen's eyebrows shot up in surprise as he watched the three heads crowd around their new caretaker. Hayes stroked the cobalt muzzle, marveling at the warm, ridged texture of the scales. I think you're just as scared of me as I am of you." He laughed softly. "But that's okay. Daddy's here now." Yalan huffed a strangled laugh. You're calling yourself Dad? Why not? If this works, I'll earn the title. Hayes offered one more cube. The heads snapped it up with gleeful abandon. Then all three settled into a contented huddle around him, tails gently wagging and faint bioluminescent patterns pulsing on their flanks. The entire chamber seemed to exhale in relief. Myra Calder's voice chimed through Hayes's cum unit. Lieutenant, status report. Hayes clicked the unit on. Sir, I've initiated positive reinforcement feeding. They're eating from my hand and showing affiliative behavior. Minimal aggression so far. Myra's tone was cautious. Affiliative? Describe. 3-head cuddle. 1 limb around my waist, 2 heads leaning in for petting. The alpha even laid its head on my boot. I think they recognize me as a benign presence. Hayes glanced at the trembling Yalin outside. And yes, that is the word. A pause. Then Mira said quietly, proceed, but maintain protocol lock. No unscheduled contact. Hayes nodded, though she couldn't see. Understood. AM. Initiating calm state bonding protocols. He repocketed the remaining synth meat and turned his full attention to Cerberus. For the next hour, he spent time observing their individual behaviors. The Jadehead's quick flicks of the tongue when curious, the Alpha's slow, deliberate blinks when satisfied, the Cobalt Head's restless pacing when left unattended. Whenever one of them wandered beyond arm's reach, Hayes called it back with a soft, cooing tone. Gradually, they began to follow his voice, their multifaceted eyes tracking his movements. JALE, and joined him inside, wearing a sterile suit and gloves. This is unprecedented, he whispered. I've never seen it tolerate human touch. Neither have I, Hayes admitted, touching the Cobalt Head's frilled crest. But it likes affection. They spent the next 2 hours cleaning the algae pools and inspecting the habitat's energy conduits. Hayes let each head sniff and explore the tools and panels, speaking softly. Whenever a head hissed or clicked, he paused and waited for the next calm moment before moving again. By the time they finished, the beast seemed almost domesticated, laying its 3 heads lazily against the wall, eyes half closed. Yalin shook his head in disbelief. You're a natural, Hayes grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. Maybe. All it needed was someone to listen. As they exited the habitat, the Cobalt Head pressed its snout against the glass, following Hayes with mournful eyes. Hayes pressed a hand to the opposite side. I'll be back after dinner, kiddo. Behind the observation window, Yalin watched Hayes's retreating figure. Sir, do you think it truly bonds? Hayes paused in the corridor, glancing back over his shoulder. I don't think I know. And somewhere deep within Cerberus's threefold mind, a spark of recognition ignited a nascent loyalty, fierce and unwavering, that would only grow stronger in the days to come. The red strobe of the alarm sliced through the pre-dawn hush at exactly 3:07 hours. Lieutenant Hayes jolted upright in his bunk, heart hammering like a jungle drum. Through the bulkhead speaker, a crackling announcement. Containment field failure, Sector 14. All personnel evacuate to safe zones. He bolted from his room, ripping on his sleeves. Yalin met him at the hatch, face pale under emergency lights. Cerberus's habitat? Yalin panted. The entire energy matrix is collapsing. Hayes didn't wait. He sprinted down the corridor, override keycard in hand. Sweat stung his eyes as he reached the reinforced door to Sector 14. The magnetic seals had shattered, leaving a jagged green-tinged rift in the plasma shield. Beyond it, the air shimmered with raw containment energy leaking into the habitat. 3 massive heads, obsidian, jade, and cobalt, lunged for the breach, claws dragging sparks across the metal floor. The alpha head, obsidian, snarled, jaws wide. The jade head's multi-lobed tongue lashed the air. Only the cobalt head flicked its frilled crest in uncertain patterns. Hayes slammed his palm on the emergency panel. Override. The door slid open with a pneumatic groan. Engineers behind him yelled to back away, but he dashed forward, voice booming. Hey! Over here! Cerberus froze mid-stride. 3 sets of glowing eyes locked onto him. Hayes dropped to one knee, arms outstretched. It's okay, Dad's here, he shouted, voice raw. A surge of bioluminescent light pulsed through the cobalt head's scales, spreading in concentric waves across its body. Hayes felt the chamber hum as the creature pressed its frills to the breach's edge. In a living shimmer, the leak sealed itself, scales knitting into a membrane that fused with the shattered shield. Sparks died. The ambient hum subsided. Behind him, engineers scrambled to restart the energy matrix. Technicians monitored readouts. The hazard lights switched back to green. Containment was restored. Hayes rose slowly, chest heaving. Cerberus's 3 heads lowered in unison, each resting a muzzle against his shoulders in a protective embrace. The obsidian head nuzzled his arm. The jade head curled at his feet. The cobalt head pressed its crest to his chest, small bioluminescent flecks pulsing like a heartbeat. Yalin pushed through the cluster, offering Hayes a towel. You saved us all. Hayes wiped sweat and saliva from his brow, giving Cerberus a gentle rub between the scaled ridges. Wouldn't let you hurt my kid, he murmured. A voice crackled on his comlink Myra Calder's calm but urgent tone. Lieutenant, report. Did you contain the breach? Hayes clicked to come. Ma'am, containment is stable. No casualties. Cerberus patched the rupture organically. Field integrity at 100%. There was a stunned pause. Then Myra's quiet reply. Remarkable. Stand by for debrief. Hayes cut the link and looked at Cerberus, 3 heads fixed on him, tails gently thumping the floor. He smiled, weary but triumphant. See, he whispered to the beast. Dad never gives up. And in that sealed chamber, amid the echo of restored systems, an unbreakable bond gleamed brighter than any containment field. Dr. Mira Calder stepped off the grav lift Monday morning and felt the charged hum of orbital research platform Epsilon 9 more keenly than ever. Her leave had been a blur of rehydration tanks and holoconcerts, a welcome break from Cerberus's insistent growls and guard shifts. But now, the station's corridors thrummed with anticipation. Technicians and security officers whispered in alcoves, and the airlock's bioscanners glowed with urgent diagnostics. She made her way to the xenobiology wing, heart-pounding. Through the reinforced viewport of Sector 14, she saw him, Lieutenant Arlo Hayes, kneeling beside Cerberus's resting form. The 3 heads, obsidian, jade, and cobalt, tilted in unison toward him, tails curled like contented puppies. The cobalt head flicked a soft bioluminescent pulse that illuminated Hayes's gentle smile. Myra pressed her palm to the glass, breath catching. She keyed her comm unit. Lieutenant Hayes, report to the council chamber in 10 minutes. Hayes looked up, his expression a mixture of pride and relief. On my way, Doctor. Inside the habitat, Jarvis, the station's AI steward, broadcast the decontamination sequence. Hayes gave Cerberus one last pat before standing and following Myra down the corridor. Every step echoed with the memory of the breach, of the beast's uncanny healing, and of his unwavering calm under pressure. The council chamber's walls were lined with holoconsoles, projecting energy field readouts and genetic stability indices. At the head of the table sat Admiral Reyes and a half-dozen board members in austere uniforms. They barely concealed their skepticism as Hayes entered. Mira cleared her throat. Thank you, Admiral. The lieutenant has a full report. She stepped aside. Hayes took a deep breath and began. On Saturday at 03:07 hours, Cerberus's containment field experienced critical failure. I entered the habitat without tranquilizers protocol would have meant evacuation and engaged positive imprinting cues. He activated a holoclip, the breach closing, Cerberus's scales fusing with energy sparks, and the three heads weaving. Around him protectively, silence fell. Admiral Reyes leaned forward, explained the mechanism. Hayes glanced at Mira, who gave him an encouraging nod. Cerberus senses and responds to social bonding pheromones and emotional stabilizers. Through tactile reassurance and tone modulation, I triggered an ancestral imprinting algorithm encoded in its genome. It recognized me as a parental figure, its dad, and enacted a defensive override on the failing shields. One board. Members' eyes widened. So this attachment prevented a full containment breach. Exactly. Hayes' voice was steady. And because the bond is symbiotic, Cerberus's gestural healing can be replicated once an approved human imprint is established. Myra interjected. This protocol could transform Project Cerberus from a standalone weapon to a co-defense. Partner, with proper handler training, we gain unprecedented field reliability. The board conferred in low tones. Moments later, Admiral Reyes nodded. Lieutenant Hayes, Dr. Calder, your results are unprecedented. We'll implement an imprinting program under strict guidelines. Hayes, you'll lead handler training. Hayes' chest swelled. He exchanged a triumphant glance with Cerberus, visible through the viewport. That evening, Hayes returned to the habitat for a private session. He entered quietly, hands in his pockets. Cerberus stirred, three heads swiveling to greet him. He knelt, whispering, "Ready for round two, kids?" The beast's tails thumped in unison. The kobold head nudged his hand, beckoning. Hayes smiled and sat cross-legged amongst them, the facility's soft lighting bathing their bonded silhouettes in gentle warmth. In the weeks that followed, handlers from across the fleet arrived to learn Hayes' methods: gentle tone, consistent feeding, schedules, and respectful touch. Each rookie emerged from the habitat with odd expressions, mirroring Jalen's first-day disbelief. As for Hayes and Cerberus, they settled into an unlikely family rhythm. In the quiet hours before sunrise, Hayes would read aloud from Old Earth novels while the beast's three heads bobbed in rapt attention. At mealtimes, he prepared synth meat cubes just the way they liked. And every night, they rested head to hand, three scales glowing softly in unison. On the day of the first field deployment, Hayes stood at the airlock, Cerberus coiled beside him. Admiral Reyes placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good luck, Lieutenant." Hayes looked down at the beast, one hand on each of the two larger heads, the cobalt one pressing against his chest. "Let's show them what a father and child can do." With that, they stepped into the shuttle bayman and beast, bonded by fate and choice, ready to face whatever the cosmos would throw at them, together.